Okay, folks, it is 6:30, and let us come back to order, please. We did not have a closed session, so we don't have anything to come out of. We'll go straight into the 6:30 business meeting. We'll begin the 6:30 business meeting with a moment of silence, please. Councilors, are there any announcements? Okay, we have a couple of proclamations. The first proclamation is recognizing Cindy Richardson. Just stand there for a second. I'm going to read the proclamation, then I'll come down and give it to you. Recognizing Cindy Richardson as the 2023 Virginia State CIT Coalition Peer of the Year. Whereas last year I just sent you a letter. This time I give you official proclamation. So whereas the Crisis Intervention Team, or CIT program, is a community partnership of law enforcement, mental health, and addiction professionals, individuals who live with mental illness and or addiction disorders, their families, and other partners to improve community responses to mental health crises. And whereas the CIT model, known as the Memphis model, was first developed in 1988 and since has spread throughout the United States and several nations worldwide, and whereas the Virginia Crisis Intervention Team Coalition, VACIT, is an incorporated nonprofit organization that supports crisis intervention teams to improve behavioral health crisis response through community collaboration, training, and advocacy. And whereas VACIT values safety, partnership, dignity, and respect, and innovation, and aspires to promote safe and appropriate responses in Virginia to those affected by behavioral health crises. And whereas VACIT's purpose is to promote and support collaborative efforts to create and sustain more effective interactions among law enforcement, behavioral health care providers, individuals with mental illness, their families, and communities, and to reduce stigma related to mental illness. And whereas on October 17th, 2023, Ms. Cindy Richardson of On Our Own Peer Support was presented the 2023 Virginia State CIT Coalition Peer of the Year Award at a Virginia CIT conference ceremony. Now, therefore, the Charlottesville City Council congratulates Ms. Cindy Richardson for receiving this prestigious award and recognition, and we express appreciation for her dedicated service to the community and to the work of crisis intervention. Signed and sealed this 6th day of November, 2023, J. Lloyd Sunk III, Mayor.
Tom believes in me, and he's always putting my name in something. and I follow. But it's a labor of love, and this is what happens. You get your roses while you're here. If you lead with caring and with your heart, and if you know me and what I love my job. I get up and I go put my clothes on, and then I just go out and I serve, and that's what it is. It's about serving. So I won't speak long, but thank you everybody. Thank you, Mayor Smith.
And we have a second proclamation recognizing the 160th anniversary of the First Baptist Church on West Main Street. And Vice Mayor Wade will take that one for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First Baptist Church, West Main Street, 160th anniversary recognition. Whereas the story of First Baptist Church West Main Street of Charlottesville began before the Civil War, when congregants worshiped together under segregated conditions. And whereas in March 1863, shortly after signing the proclamation, the Emancipation Proclamation, approximately 800 black members presented an application to form their own congregation, and that their request was granted several months later. And whereas in 1868, the congregation purchased the mud wall building, officially the Delavon Hotel, becoming known as Delavon Baptist Church. And whereas the Delavon Baptist Church building was raised in 1867 and the new building completed in 1883, with the congregation becoming known as First Baptist Church. And whereas after the Civil War, the First Baptist Church was instrumental in holding instructions within its walls, whereby hundreds of formerly enslaved people were educated, and members have been the forefront of race relations for nearly a century, instrumental in establishing the local NAACP chapter, integrating patients of the University of Virginia, serving on local boards and commission, and remaining actively involved in the community. Now, therefore, be resolved, the Charlottesville City Council takes great pleasure in recognizing the 160th anniversary of First Baptist Church, West Main Street, and the contributions its members throughout the years in service to Charlottesville and the surrounding community. Signed and sealed this date, 6th of November 2023, by J. Lloyd Snook III, Mayor.
Now, we got to give this to somebody. I hope somebody's going to stand up for it.
Congratulations, brother. Appreciate
Well, first of all, being truly thankful and honored by God to be able to be here. Thanks to the City Council. We have several members here this evening from First Baptist, including our interim pastor, Pastor Jerome Lee, Dr. Jerome Lee, excuse me. If you would please stand. Yes. Good enough. The church has only been there for 160 years through God's grace and His blessing. So we are truly thankful. We would like to actually officially invite each and every one of you all to come out and join in our 160th anniversary next week, Sunday the 12th, and each one of you all as well. Services at 10:45 in the morning. You're certainly more than welcome to be there with us. And for those of you who are truly interested, we will feed you afterwards. Those of you who can, those who will, please come out and join us. It will be a truly wonderful celebration. And thank you all. Thank you to the city again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. So, next item up is our consent agenda. Ms. Thomas, would you read the consent agenda, please?
Consent agenda number 2, minutes. August 21st, regular meeting, October 3rd, work session, October 11th, work session. 3, ordinance, amendment of the Charlottesville City Code, Section 15-75, to comply with recent amendments to the Virginia Code, Section 46.2-924A, requiring drivers to stop for pedestrians in crosswalks. Second reading. 4, ordinance, amendment of Charlottesville City Code, Section 15-435, to permit a towing operator fuel surcharge fee to conform to changes in state law. Second reading. 5, resolution to appropriate funds from the Charlottesville Albemarle Adult Drug Treatment Court Grant Award, $240,000. Second reading. 6, resolution to appropriate funding from the FY22 State Criminal Alien Assistance Program, grant for Albemarle Charlottesville Regional Jail, $19,050, second reading. 7, resolution to appropriate funding from the FY23 Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS HIV grant, $382,352, second reading. 8, a resolution to appropriate Victim Witness Assistance Program grant, $258,342, one of two readings. 9, a resolution to appropriate funding from the Supreme Court of Virginia Behavioral Health Docket Grant, $67,792, one of two readings. 10, a resolution to appropriate Virginia Department of Education Special Nutrition Program Child and Adult Care Food Program funding, $30,000, one of two readings. 11, resolution accepting Paynes Mill Road into the city street system. Number 12, a resolution to approve mutual aid agreement for fire and rescue services between the City of Charlottesville and Albemarle County.
Say, we'll now take public comment regarding items on the consent agenda that were just read by the clerk. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes. Is there anybody in council chambers who would like to speak on a consent agenda item? If you have pre-registered and you want to talk about something else, that moment will come in just a few minutes. But if you have something on those 11 items, this is the time to talk. Anybody? Okay, seeing nobody, we will move on then. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, please vote. The motion passes 5-0 to adopt the consent agenda. Mr. Sanders, is there a report from the city manager's office?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things. First, I wanted to brief council as well as bring the public up to date as to where we stand on the alternative fuel study. We have a lot of interest, of course, in CAT finishing up their work to bring that particular study result back to council with their recommendations for you all to make some determinations as to what next steps we will follow. We have worked with the team to decide to push that back to January. The actual presentation of the recommendations will come at a January work session and council meeting on the 16th. So the goal would be for there to be sufficient time for that information to be made public so that others can take a look at it, and of course for council to have some time with it, because it will lead to some big decisions. As we've been discussing, any transformation of a fleet of the size that we have is going to be very expensive, and we need to make sure that we take the appropriate steps and we think through that in the best way that we can. What we're also doing, and this is also information for the public as well, is that we have been working to try to see if we can't schedule a site visit. The goal would be to go to Montgomery County, Maryland at some point in December. We're working on trying to figure out exact dates as to when we might be able to have a brief visit for council members, the public, as well as media and advocates if they would like to join us, to give council the opportunity to see what does a transformation like this really entail. They'll give you a chance to see some of the infrastructure improvements that will be required, and then a chance to actually talk to individuals who've done this. So we'll be able to hear from them some of their various issues, some of their lessons learned, and hopefully see some of their celebratory moments that have occurred as well in being able to make the changes that we've been discussing here in our community. So we'll be working on that. There'll be more details to come. I've enlisted the assistance of our communications director, who's going to help coordinate since we're going to be inviting external parties to the government to participate on this particular event. And as soon as we get those details, we'll be making them public and look to invite others to join us for that particular trip. Next item is a continued update on homelessness intervention. As I've expressed over the past few months, that is a top priority for me. And we continue to work on making sure that we are paying attention to the needs of our unhoused population. In the short-term area, we are continuing to look at overnight shelter capacity, especially as our winter has arrived a little bit earlier. Y'all don't know me as well. I hate cold weather. I don't like snow. So I'm already stressing out about the fact that I need a coat someday. So the fact that that is the case, then I'm looking to make sure that our unhoused population have options to not be outside and exposed to the temperature as well. So we'll continue to work on that. Right now, our capacity has been sufficient, so we're going to continue to work on looking for additional beds and making sure those beds come available as needed, and that we can respond if that other stuff, that white stuff, starts to fall, and then makes me a little sad.
Spoken like somebody from Louisiana.
Yeah, well,
Dandruff from the sky.
it's all right. But more importantly, I think this is also an update for the public on one of the key priorities. It falls into the longer-term category for me that I want to express some continued support on. And I'll be bringing an item back to council very soon in support of you spending funds to help make some of these things happen. But the permanent supportive housing development at the former hotel site on 29, we refer to it as Premier Circle. It's 80 units of permanent supportive housing. That project has a budget gap, and that budget gap right now is $1.4 million, and they are short 40 vouchers to be able to move forward on the project as planned. And I think it's important for us as a region to come together and figure out how to close that gap and get that project back on track. The city has not put a lot of money into the project previously, and I hope to fix that, so that's why I've been working on it. We have had some conversations with the county and additional other partners, and the goal would be that we can close that gap and ensure that that project can start in May as scheduled. 80 units of permanent supportive housing is a big deal. It is an important piece to our puzzle as to how we continue to support what is happening in our community as it relates to those individuals who are struggling to maintain a household of their own. And the goal would be to get that done, as I also will continue to work in that space that I've already expressed the desire to have a full-service shelter available in this community 24/7, 365, so that we can make sure that no one has to live outside if they are looking to move inside. So with that, I'll end and turn it over to Will Bassett from Parks and Rec. I have our consultant for the Parks and Rec Master Plan. They're going to actually introduce you to the process that we are about to kick off. This is a very important task for me. I'm excited, I'll tell you that, because I've been asking for a Parks Master Plan for I don't know how many months now. But we're going to start that process. The goal is to engage the community, and we will be able to look at what are some improvements that we can make overall as it relates to parks and recreation in our community. So, Will?
Thank you. Good evening, Council. My name is Will Bassett with Department of Parks and Recreation, and I'm here tonight to introduce Mike Svets with Pros Consulting, who will be conducting a virtual presentation regarding the Parks and Recreation Comprehensive Master Plan. The department is in the beginning stage of this plan, and we've hired Pros Consulting, and they'll be guiding and assisting us with the development of the plan. Tonight, Pros will give you an overview of the project, process, and the outcomes of the master plan process and the final draft and the final plan. I'll now turn that over to Mr. Svets.
Can't hear you.
You cannot hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Now you can hear me. There we go. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Very nice to make this presentation to you. It's been quite a while since I've had the opportunity to present to Charlottesville City Council. My name is Mike Svets, principal with Pros Consulting, recovering Parks and Recreation Director, and did spend about 5 years with the City of Charlottesville. So, as mentioned, tonight is not meant to be an end-all be-all. It is just to provide you an overview of the process and some of the key touch points and or deliverables. So I'm going to kill my video, share my screen, and run through this with you, hopefully here in short order, as soon as the screen loads. Sorry, it's taking a second or two to load.
Mike, this is David Dolahunt with the city. I'm able to share, just in case, I can share on this end.
Yeah, you know what? Let's do that if you want to stop my share. If you can do that. I seem to be frozen on my end. My apologies.
your presentation is now displaying on Zoom. Are you able to see that on your end?
I cannot, but I can work through it very quickly. So just very quickly, the team so the second slide, if we want to go to that, the team is pretty tight team. Pros Consulting is the prime or the lead on the project. LPDA, landscape architect firm located in Charlottesville, is a part of our team. ETC Institute will be conducting a statistically valid survey for us as part of this process, and we also are bringing ZEC 8 Insights into the project to help with evaluation of the programs and services associated with the current department offerings. PROS has been around for about 28 years now. PROS also was the firm that in next slide, but PROS was the firm that did the last Parks and Recreation Master Plan in 2005 for the city of Charlottesville. Next slide, in terms of implementation or the overall process, one thing we want to focus on is recognizing that implementation isn't something that we talk about at the end of the project. It's something that is front and center throughout the entire process. And we're really focused on understanding and creating an implementable and realistic master plan for the entire process. The next slide really kind of, if we want to skip to the community engagement, the next slide is really focused on the facility assessments, park and facility assessments. This is something that is currently being undertaken by LPDA. They have been out assessing and inventorying the entire system. This creates a good foundation to give us an understanding of the current system as it exists today, and will be a jumping off point for us as we start to talk about improvements for the overall system going forward. In terms of the my apologies, in terms of community engagement, we want to ensure that we take a very holistic and never-ending approach to community engagement. It is important to recognize we are going to use a lot of different tools in the toolkit. These are just some examples, but we will certainly bring as many of these to the table as possible. Next slide. In terms of a project website, we do have a social pinpoint website. It is a very interactive website. It is currently live. That is the web link there at the bottom. We will shorten that as we start to push this out as part of the project. But it's an opportunity not only as a repository for information associated with the master plan, but it gives the public an opportunity to engage along the way. Tell us your likes, your dislikes, your opportunities for improvement, what you like most about the system or a specific park. This is just something that will live throughout the entire project. It is, again, not going to be the end-all be-all in terms of engagement with the community, but it is a great way for folks to continually be updated with regards to where we're at with the plan. Next slide. So one thing that you're going to start to realize as we go through this, and you all know this, but a master plan project is very comprehensive. In fact, the department labeled it as a comprehensive park and recreation master plan. We want to bring this back to you and the public and the advisory boards and the project steering committee in what we call digestible chunks. We're going to do a series of meetings with regards to just the overview of the process. We want to bring back to you another set of meetings around community needs, the technical key findings, recommendations, and then final master plan. What this will ensure is that we're getting it right along the way, that we have the opportunity to elicit feedback and incorporate that feedback into any step of the process, so that when we get to the end, we will have more or less covered every stone, so that when we're talking about final plan adoption, we will have had the opportunity to really talk about every issue and recommendation along the way. Next slide. So one big component for us is to ensure that diversity is heard throughout this entire process. Next slide. One thing that I think, when we talk about a statistically valid survey, we talk about underrepresented, or we talk about websites. That's not going to reach everybody. So what we really have to understand is how best to reach underrepresented populations. The Social Vulnerability Index, and some of the key factors: race, ethnicity, poverty, language barriers, health, disability, educational attainment, other, that we need to be aware of, are all variables that we need to take into consideration when we start to talk about making sure that we have a holistic community engagement process. Next slide. So this is a really quick map of the level of vulnerability based on the CDC Social Vulnerability Index. You can see that the lighter shades, or the green shades, is where you have low to medium. The bluer shade is medium to high. The purple is high. These represent challenges for us, and also opportunities to make sure that we're tailoring a community engagement process in such a way that we reach everybody in all neighborhoods in Charlottesville. So though we will certainly apply many overarching community engagement processes, as we refine our community engagement process through the end of the year and the beginning of next year, we will certainly tailor it to ensure that we're getting people's voices heard and represented in the plan. Next slide. The statistically valid survey is going to be key. We can produce this in multiple languages, and this is going to be a very data-driven, result-driven process. We will be able to divide this up based on household type in terms of priorities. We will also be able to divide this up geographically, so that we're not just creating a system-wide plan, but we're also able to hone in and focus on the recreational values, the park and recreational values, as they differ, and what those needs are as they differ from household type to household type, as well as geography. Next slide. So all of this will result in what we call community needs. Programs is one thing, services is another thing, park and rec facilities and amenities is another component. And we will certainly use a very data-driven process to ensure that we are understanding not only the prioritized needs of the community as a whole, as I said, but also understanding them by geography as well as household type. Next slide. Level of service is also critically important, and we want to ensure that we're creating equitable levels of service provisions, whether it be for programs, whether it be for services, whether it be for parks and amenities. Next slide. One thing that we are going to do is map that CDC vulnerability index and dive into it a little bit further. We're going to use other factors, such as how well have you invested in parks in certain areas of your community over the course of the last 10 years? What's the plan going forward? And have we been applying equitable resources to the community to start to understand that, are we trying to create as much equity and accessibility to high quality park and recreation, parks, facilities, amenities, as well as programs and services? Next slide. We'll end up with a composite map, and I'm just using an example of this from Virginia Beach. But basically, you can see on this map that all of the hot areas, the heat index, the reds are where the most amount of investment needs to be made in Virginia Beach, and the green is where the lighter areas need to be made. So what this does is it takes the narrative around understanding what needs to be done, and really has the ability to focus in using this kind of visual tool. Next slide. Programming and service equity assessment is a component. This is something that will be led by ZEC 8 Insights. Pros will certainly have a say in this, but one of the key outcomes, next slide of this, is to really create a Miller matrix and a prioritization lens, understand what the department should be doing, and understand what the department should not be doing. This is really important because every department in the city has limited resources, and we need to use those resources in a way that's going to reach the most amount of the community and meet the most amount of needs. So this is just a way, from a program perspective, to be able to help us understand what businesses or lines of service as it relates to programs that the city should be in, and the ones that maybe we just need to stop doing. Next slide. We are also going to create concept plans for this master plan with a focus on 4 specific areas. Next slide. We are going to do concept plans for Tonsler Park, Booker T. Washington Park, Market Street Park, and Court Square Park. These will have their own separate community engagement processes that will take place next summer and fall. The concept plan, next slide. But I want to make sure that everybody understands that coming out of this, a deliverable for the concept plan is going to be a high-level idea test fit. It's flexible. It's going to be an example of what could happen and not necessarily what will happen. But I think it's important to recognize that we need some 4 very distinct park improvement plans for those specific parks going forward in very different parts of the community. Next slide. The capital improvement recommendations and costs refer to this more about cost estimating, and you will not necessarily be adopting a capital improvement plan for Parks and Recreation when you adopt a master plan. Next slide. But we're going to break this up into what we call 3 buckets. We recognize the city has criteria around which you determine whether or not capital projects go forward. But we're going to break capital projects up into 3 buckets. Things that are just life cycle replacement. No park amenity, no facility that ever gets built is going to last forever, and everything at some point needs to be replaced. Where there are opportunities for renovations and enhancements to existing parks, and are there any visionary projects, new acquisition, such as the acquisition you're considering as it relates to along the Rivanna? Is there an opportunity to completely renovate an entire park? For example, if that were to happen for, say, Washington Park or Tonsler, that would be something that would fall into this visionary bucket. The reason that we like to do this in these 3 buckets, though, is also there are different funding strategies. Not to say that there are unique funding strategies for each bucket, but there are absolutely funding strategies that will be applicable to only bucket 1 or bucket 2 or bucket 3. Next slide. And again, the final plan is really going to be grounded in realistic implementation strategies. We want to ensure, just like the plan was back in 2005, that it can be implemented, that it is realistic, it is within the funding resources that the city is projecting to have over the next 5 to 10 years. And we'll also challenge with regards to what are additional funding strategies that we can bring to the table. Next slide. So last thing I want to mention is that we are going to root this all within the total cost of ownership. There are obviously funding sources for capital investment, but anything you build, you're charged with operating and maintaining that. And we need to ensure that you have the appropriate resources on the operations and maintenance side to support that capital investment. And then, as mentioned in the CIP discussion, we will also give you an understanding of how long anything should last and what that potential life cycle replacement cost would be. Next slide. So our most immediate next steps is really going to be we already did this for the Parks and Rec Advisory Board in October. The park assessment site visits are occurring now. The kickoff meetings will be there next week in Charlottesville. Unfortunately, the weather will, as Mr. Sanders mentioned, start to get a little chilly. But we'll be there next week. Again, we are going to be doing some stakeholder and focus group meetings next week. We are going to do a kickoff meeting with the community as a whole at the Carver Recreation Center at 6 o'clock on Tuesday the 14th. We're also going to do the program and service assessment kickoff in December. And on December 1st, we will be conducting intercept surveys at the Grand Illumination event. So this is just, again, a quick overview of the process. It is not intended to be completely comprehensive of everything that we're going to do, but just some of the highlights. And so at this point, I'll take any questions, concerns, comments, suggestions you may have.
Councilors, any questions?
Yeah, I have some. Thank you so much for this. You know, I'd heard of the CDC's social vulnerability index, and I went to a CDC site and they talk about that, you know, it's good when you're looking at stresses such as natural or human-caused disasters. And I was wondering, how are you going to measure that, and what do you see as the impact? I mean, I know the importance of it, but
I think the importance of us understanding at a very first step is to understand where your community's vulnerability is most, is currently, and what we're trying to do with that is, number one, recognize that those basic needs as it relates to Parks and Recreation are likely going to be very different in parts of those community, in that part of the community, but it's also going to allow us an opportunity to start to frame the community engagement plan in such a way that we're going to tailor the processes to ensure that we get into those communities more so than just ensuring that, say, we're asking folks to come to us at the Carver Recreation Center on Tuesday, the November 14th at 6 o'clock. So we're using that as kind of a jumping off point. It is certainly not meant to be an end-all be-all. But again, it's just a data point that will help to inform some of our decisions as we go through the actual implementation of the master plan process, but also use the information that comes out of that in such a way to start to identify the difference in the demographics, the tapestry segments, income levels, race, ethnicity, and the basic needs that come out of it. I would say one of the best ways to look at this is to say, yes, we're going to do an overall system plan, but we are going to have very key recommendations for very different parts of your community that will give Parks and Recreation the opportunity to really tailor its services geographically to the different demographics in your community.
thank you. And when Rion introduced this to us several months ago, I told him that the input process was going to be real important, that you really have a good engagement process to get input, and it sounds like you do. You just really have to go out so that you get a diverse input from the community. And when you have meetings, a lot of times people don't come out. You have to go to them, particularly if you want to get. And you mentioned one thing. You said meeting in the box. I assume that's some pretty portable type of things that you can take to, like maybe a church or a community center, something like that.
Correct. Yeah, it's really just a matter of taking the show on the road, right? I think you're absolutely spot on. It's a matter of us getting out into the community as much as we possibly can. As I recently told the department, the first blush at this is in a week, but that is not the end all be all when it comes to community engagement. We're not going to say we're going to do some stakeholder and focus group meetings, we're going to do a community meeting, we're going to do a survey and be done. We fully expect the key finding components of the community engagement process to last through the spring of next year. We just need to make sure that we get as many touches and interfaces with the community and residents as possible.
Great. And I just have one more question or comment that I would like, not detailed information, but just in large numbers, or a breakdown of the input to ensure that we got a wide range of input. Doesn't have to be a survey of people come in, but it could be a guess or something. So so that I can have some assurances that this study represents the community. So, thank you.
Correct. You're very welcome.
I just have one kind of random question, but is the Ivy Creek Natural Area included as part of this master planning process?
Yes, it is a city-county park, and so that will certainly be a part of something that we tap into as we go forward.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was looking at your presentation, and you had your toolkit, and a large percentage of individuals that utilize parks and recs are younger people. And you indicated that there would be some engagement with students, which I think is critical, because I think that you need a buy-in from all of your citizens, but when you're looking at some of the facilities, you need to consider the individuals that use it, just like the skate park. You know, a lot of the children that use the skate park are within a certain age group, which is also a demographic. One of the things that we discussed earlier were services for persons living in particular communities and courses or classes that they may want. So I appreciate you saying that this is not a one and done, but if you have something that is scheduled and you don't get the return or the attendance, I hope that you will go back and look at it and be very pointed, particularly when you're meeting with students, what their schedules are. You're saying that you're going to start now through the spring of the year, and we have various athletic programs and competitions going on that may impact those students from coming, but also making sure that the parents of the younger children who participate in our little dance classes and ballet classes at the Carver Recreation Center are able to attend as well, because there are particular things that they may be interested in. So we have a varying demographic in Charlottesville as it relates to ethnicities, race, socioeconomics, and it's very, very critical for this to happen.
Thank you. Duly noted.
Any other questions? Well, we look forward to engaging with you over the next year on this and look forward to the reports. Thank you so much for presenting to us this evening.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Have a good rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Here.
And that's the end of my report.
Okay, so that concludes the city manager's report. It is now time for our community matters section. We have 8 pre-registered speakers, leaving 8 slots for additional speakers on community matters. If one of the first 8 speakers is unavailable, we'll take the next person on the wait list to move into that slot. Each person will have up to 3 minutes to speak. We'll now open the floor to pre-registered speakers. Is our first speaker, Ketty Rupnick, available?
I am, yes.
You have 3 minutes.
Okay, lovely. So first off, thank you all for your time tonight and for allowing me to speak about a speeding issue that's occurring in our neighborhood. Thank you for the work that you do to contribute to the well-being of our community. My name is Ketty Rupnick, and I live at 219 Langford Avenue with my partner and my young 2-year-old son. We've lived on Langford Avenue since 2019, and it's a wonderful place to be. I love it. I have amazing neighbors, many of them who are here tonight, to also voice their concerns about speeding that's occurring within our neighborhood. So if you don't know about Langford Avenue, it's a connecting street between Ridge Street, which is off of 5th Street, and also South 1st Street. Of the 35 homes that are on our street, more than half of them have children that live there. These are really important members of our community and our neighborhood. We obviously care a lot about their well-being. They live and play in this neighborhood and also commute to and from the bus. And I believe that there are several factors regarding the design of the street that contribute to and exacerbate some of the speeding issues. So there's 2 hills within our street. So as you go down the street, a lot of the vehicles are picking up speed. Also, there's sidewalk discontinuity. So if someone's walking down one side of the sidewalk, it ends and they're crossing the street to get to the other side to use the sidewalk. That increases the risk with those people being in the street and increases their vulnerability to traffic and safety issues. So we've witnessed intense and dangerous speeding at all hours of the night and some near misses that have really made me hold my breath. Tonight, I stand here with my neighbors and with my community members asking how we can work together with the city to evaluate and implement some traffic calming issues and measures on Langford Avenue to ensure the safety and well-being of all of those who live on our street, including our children. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rupnick. And I note that there are a number of other folks who had asked to speak on the same topic who are on the wait list, and maybe you'll get there or not, but at least I gather there are other people here who support what she just said. Just give me a show of hands so you get a sense of how many of you all there are. Okay. So if we don't get to you, we've at least got that expression. Next is Maria Duster.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you for your time. My name is Maria Duster, and I am It's okay. And I'm a climate justice policy manager at the Community Climate Collaborative here in Charlottesville. And I am here to speak today on the city's alternative fuel study and in favor of zero-emission buses. When we think about issues such as energy and transportation, I think we should always consider the ways in which they intersect with and reproduce different social, environmental, and economic inequalities. C3's Transit Equity Report highlighted that low-income households can spend over 30% of their income on transport costs. Transport equity is inextricably intertwined with housing affordability and cost of living, issues that cities such as Charlottesville have and continue to struggle with. Right now, the city of Charlottesville is confronting the fact that many folks in our community do not have adequate access to care and housing. This is symptomatic of decades-long policies that have pushed Black and brown folks out, prioritized redevelopment over community preservation, and depleted an already low affordable housing stock. Many people cannot afford to own a car or pay for gas, car insurance, or other related costs. By investing in transit, we can make cars less of a necessity, increase mobility, and lower a person's monthly bills in the process. These costs include medical care as well. The pollution that diesel buses emit has been linked to heart and lung problems as well as premature death. Vulnerable populations, especially Black, brown, and low-income folks, are disproportionately affected by these pollutants. Put simply, no one should have to put their health at risk in order to use public transit. I'd also like to emphasize that this is a direct, local action that the council can take. Right now, for example, the city of Charlottesville purchases carbon offsets from BP as a core way to reduce its carbon footprint. In fact, carbon offsets make up nearly 25% of the city's emissions reductions. While purchasing carbon offsets can sometimes reduce GHG emissions on a global scale, they do not address emissions within the city itself. 25% holds a lot of potential. While the city does not necessarily need to stop purchasing carbon offsets completely, where we spend our money matters, as does who it most benefits. Investing in technologies such as zero-emission buses, like BEBs, can positively impact our community. Zero-emission buses are not a fix-all to the various issues facing Charlottesville, but they do represent an actionable step that the city can take towards reducing emissions locally and improving the livelihoods of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duster. Next up is Lucas Schatz.
Good evening, Charlottesville City Council. My name is Lucas Schatz, and I'm currently a first-year engineering student at the University of Virginia. I'm here to talk about the upcoming CAT decision for the buses. The City of Charlottesville has the potential to act as a statewide leader as it determines what type of bus will constitute its CAT fleet in the coming years. I propose that the City of Charlottesville maintain 36 diesel buses while simultaneously revamping its fleet with 22 new battery electric expansion buses, complete with fast and or en route charging over the next 5 years. CAT's biggest weapon to combat Charlottesville GHG emissions and meet the city's climate goals is the restoration of public faith. In 2021, ridership numbers were 75% lower than in 2015. Any improvement upon these numbers will aid in city emissions, regardless of the bus variety and use. Thus, as diesel buses remain the most consistently reliable bus option, the city ought to retain 36 diesel buses, both to provide a backbone of reliability for the new fleet and allow CAT to phase in new battery electric buses over the coming 5 years. Additionally, diesel buses are the cheapest option of the available bus types, require no excess infrastructure or facility costs, and are already familiar to CAT personnel. Nonetheless, price at face value does not illustrate the full picture. The City of Charlottesville has pledged carbon neutrality by 2050, but the city's transportation sector accounts for 29% of Charlottesville's GHG emissions. I urge this council to consider the fact that our current emissions progress is coming off the back of Dominion Energy's changing energy mix, not an effort on the part of this community. This city has pledged a 45% emission reduction by 2030. 22 new BEBs would make CAT's fleet roughly 40% electric by 2028. We're not asking you to do something radical. It's simply time for Charlottesville to adhere to its own climate directive, and CAT must play its part. BEBs remain the best alternative fuel option available to cut down on CAT emissions, with lower operating costs than low-carbon alternatives, and a booming industry behind them. Purchasing 20 new battery electric buses by 2028, along with the 2 BEBs already approved, allows CAT to adapt in real time and scale up the infrastructure for the new BEBs as they arrive. As CAT builds out and expands its EV infrastructure, the ease of adding additional BEBs will compound. However, we must begin purchasing BEBs now, while the $1.7 billion of federal grants for low emissions buses remains a potential to offset costs. A sustainable CAT and a reliable CAT are not in any way mutually exclusive. I implore you, Charlottesville City Council, adopt this mix of diesel and battery electric buses and usher in the next decade of innovative Charlottesville transit.
Thank you, Mr. Schatz. Next up, we have Violet Wiley. Either microphone works, by the way, folks, whichever is easiest.
Good evening. I'm here today to speak on the zero-emission buses. My name is Violet Wiley, and I'm a junior at Western Albemarle High School. I'm one of the leaders of the Green New Deals for Schools Club at Western, and I am also part of the Environmental Studies Academy there. This summer, I had the opportunity to participate in the James River Leadership Academy, which is a program designed to enable teens to become active members in the fight to better the environment around us. I learned firsthand while paddling the James River with experts the harmful impacts that come from industrial and agricultural runoff and individuals and communities not being good stewards of the river. As a part of this academy, I will complete a project which will make a positive impact on our community as well as helping the river. As I've been thinking and deciding on what specific issue I would like my project to address, and have been looking at issues such as pollution in the James and the actions of the community in addressing them, it has become very clear that there is an interconnectedness between the issues present in my community and issues plaguing the river. When I became more aware of the side effects of careless human actions on the river, I started to see that issues in the James were also present in my community. This pattern of negative human impacts is present in every community, including mine and yours. But you are capable of having a positive impact. If you all vote in favor of battery electric buses, the positive impact this decision would have on our environment are clear. Battery electric buses emit 1.29 pounds of greenhouse gases per mile, while compressed natural gas buses emit 5.77 pounds. This is almost 4.5 times more per bus. When it comes to the fight against climate change, every action matters. What we do in our community individually affects all the other communities around us. This vote will move Charlottesville towards being a role model for other communities to follow and look up to in the fight against climate change. For example, even though I do not live in the city of Charlottesville, but rather in Albemarle County, this issue is incredibly important to me as it one day may lead Albemarle to follow in your footsteps. I'm part of the growing generation who loves the outdoors and recognizes the value and importance that it holds for everyone. Because of this, I urge you to think about how your actions here today will pave the way to create a world where my children and even grandchildren can experience nature and the world around them in the same way both you and I have. This will only be possible if we start taking action today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wiley. Next is Sarah Stevens.
Hi, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Sarah Stevens, and I'm a resident of 226 Langford Avenue in the Ridge Street neighborhood. I'm here tonight with many of my neighbors, both in person and virtually, to ask the council to install traffic calming measures on our street. As our first speaker, Ketty Rupnick, detailed, Langford Avenue is a 2-block-long residential street that runs parallel to Elliott Avenue. This is a street full of young families. My wife and I have 3 children under the age of 4, 3-year-old twins, and a 1-year-old. One of our twins has mild cerebral palsy, which means that she has motor differences that make her slower at times. And part of her disability is that she can be quite impulsive, and we worry about her eloping outside the fence now that she's at an age to open the gate herself. In addition to our family, there are at least 12 other children on the street that are under the age of 10 years old, and there are more on the way. These numbers do not include any homes in the adjoining Burnett neighborhood, which also houses many young children. I want to impress that Langford Avenue is truly a delightful street filled with caring neighbors, and we've been residents of the street since 2018. The problem is that our little street gets a lot of traffic and the cars go way too fast. The street has 2 hills, and at the bottom of Langford are the housing complexes on First Street. At the top of Langford is a connection to Rich Street. Many cars use it as a quick cut through to bypass traffic on Elliott Avenue, and our narrow street was not built for that kind of volume. Other cars use it as what seems like a drag racing strip, and I wish I was just being funny. We regularly have people drive their motorcycles and cars to the top of the street just to turn around and race down, and they do this repeatedly throughout the day. With so many young children at play and pedestrians who are walking to the top of the street to catch the city bus, we absolutely need a way to slow the traffic down. Many of us have already installed fences and other barriers to keep children away from the road, but these measures are insufficient for safety given the amount of reckless driving that happens on our residential street. A recent example is Halloween. We and another family on the street went trick-or-treating on Langford. We had 5 kids under the age of 4 dressed up in costumes. We had our slow kids at play sign out, and I was so alarmed by the number of cars that exceeded the speed limit on our street despite seeing children out. I join my neighbors tonight in requesting that the city install 3 speed humps on our street, one at the top, one in the middle, and one at the end on Langford Avenue to slow down the cars. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. Next, we have Ryan McCall.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Ryan McCall. I have been a Charlottesville resident for the majority of my adult life. I'm a husband, a father of 2 boys, ages 15 and 12, and my family is my life. I'm also a board member of the Community Climate Collaborative, and I consider them my extended family. I'm here today to talk about the Zero Emission Bus Campaign, and I'm hoping you all will take what I have to say in making your decision. 9.5 years ago, I lost my mom to lung cancer, and it was one of the hardest things that I've ever been through. My mom was a wonderful human being. She always put her family and her community first. She was a public school teacher for over 30 years, teaching 3rd through 5th grade. She lived in the city most of her life. She took public transit most of her life. And I am convinced that this contributed to her developing lung cancer and dying at the age of 64. She spent most of her life outside, teaching, breathing in toxic fumes from emissions through vehicles in the city that she called home. There's not a day that goes by that I don't miss my mom, and the hardest part is that my kids have grown up without a grandmother. I know the decision to convert over to zero-emission battery electric buses is not an easy one. It comes with a decision about money, and it also comes with a decision of equity. But I believe that it is our right and it is our goal to protect our citizens, and that health should be the priority over everything else. Maybe we can do something that makes the air cleaner, and maybe that means that fewer people will develop lung diseases such as cancer. And maybe there'll be a lot more children on our streets that can grow up with their grandmothers, as my children have not grown up with theirs. And that's why I'm here, and I'm asking you all to consider my statement. And we have the opportunity to do the right thing, and I'm asking you guys to consider that as a strong possibility. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. McCall. Next is Asa Eslocker, if I've got that correct. I see you have an assistant.
I sure do. Ryan. Ryan, I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you for your statement today. Hello, my name is Asa Eslocker, and thank you for this opportunity to speak today. I'm also here with my daughter, 9-year-old Violet Eslocker. Thank you. My family and I, we live on Langford Avenue in Charlottesville. And we're also here with many of our neighbors to request traffic calming measures on Langford Avenue, like speed bumps or speed humps, or what you think are appropriate. My wife and I have 3 children, ages 6, 7, and 9, and we've lived on Langford Avenue for the last 9 years. And like all parents, we remember many adorable sayings from their toddler years. And one of their most memorable childlike sayings evolved from their own righteous indignation at many speeding cars and loud vehicles racing down our street. On many family walks and strollers or trikes, or while playing outside, our kids would often point their little fingers and yell at speeding cars, "Slow down, sir," many, many times, right? It happened so often that this shout became almost like a family meme. It happened so often that we, wrongly, kind of found complacency and acceptance to the danger only feet from our house and from our children. While living on Langford Avenue, we've also enjoyed seeing the number of families and number of young children increase on our street. I think 12 or more recently, just within the last 8 or 9 or 10 years. We've also seen safety concerns increase due to the frequency of fast cars and speeding motorcycles up and down the street. It simply has become unsafe for everyone. Recently, one of the most alarming incidents happened this year when getting our children off the bus at the top of Ridge Street in Langford. When the bus stopped, a motorcyclist swerved recklessly and defiantly in front of the bus, passing the children and the bus so it could illegally speed down Langford. We felt helpless and worried about safety. How'd you feel, Violet?
I felt scared and nervous.
Scared and nervous, for the record. But fortunately, our neighbors and this Langford community is also stepping up and requesting support for better speed management on our street. And finally, the noise pollution from motorists driving too fast is also a concern. In a recent first grade riding assignment, and this is true, our 7-year-old son described how he dislikes the motorcycles and cars that drive too fast on our street and how the noise often wakes him up at night. So finally, along with nearly all of our Langford neighbors, we'd like to respectfully request that City Council approve and provide traffic calming measures on Langford Avenue as soon as possible, because we'd like everyone driving on our streets to slow down, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Violet, what does your sign say, your picture?
Well, it's a picture of our street with a couple of houses on it, and it says, "We need speed bumps." And a picture of a car going too fast, and a little person saying, "Hey," and another person saying, "Slow down, sir," and another person saying, "So loud," and another person saying, "We need speed bumps."
Thank you so much, Violet.
Next is Maria Kinnan.
Thank you so much for your time. My name is Maria Kinnan, and I'm a junior at Western Albemarle High School. I'm a co-founder of the Green New Deal for Schools Club at my school, and I'm also enrolled in the Environmental Studies Academy there. I love being outdoors and around nature as much as possible every day in any way that I can. In the summer of 2022, I was given the chance to be part of the James River Association's James River Leadership Academy, just like Violet. And as part of the program, I got to do a 5-day long paddle down the lower part of the James River, kind of near the Chesapeake Bay. I also then got the opportunity to create a capstone project on how local communities impact the James and how the James River in turn affects them. As part of the program, I learned how pollution and waste from human activities affect the river and the ecosystems both in and around it. So for my project, I went to my local middle school that I used to attend, and I talked to the 6th graders there about a creek behind their school that is a tributary into the James, and about what goes into that creek and how it also goes into the James. I also took them down to the creek where we did an activity on sediment runoff and pollution, and I taught them about the adverse effects of it and how it can decline the health of the river and the organisms that inhabit it. And just like how human activity impacts the James, it also impacts the land and cities around it. Greenhouse gas and tailpipe emissions from public transportation use, like buses, can lead to poor air quality, and especially in places like cities where the area of travel is very condensed. Poor air quality can have negative effects on people who are frequently exposed to it, like lung and heart problems. And by switching to zero-emission battery buses for the community of Charlottesville, the air quality would be much better, giving people a better quality of life while still being able to offer an affordable way to travel around the city. Growing up in Charlottesville, I know the city, and I love everything that it has to offer. From great restaurants to fun stores and festivals, I want future generations to be able to have those experiences too. With these zero-emission buses, future generations will be able to share the same experiences and enjoy the city that we all know so dearly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, so that gets us through the 8 who are definitely pre-registered, and the next 8 we're just going to take from the group here. I'll go sort of roughly group by group. Somebody over here would like to? Yes, sir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Eng. I'm a first year at UVA, and I'm speaking on the alternative fuels plan. So for Charlottesville to reach net zero emissions by 2050, it must immediately invest in infrastructure that provides for net zero transport, as transportation actually comprises 30% of energy demand in the U.S. This transit plan will chart the course for the next 12 years, and 2050 is closer than we think. So the city must make sizable progress now and almost completely transition in its additional bus fleet to battery electric buses. So in terms of zero emissions buses, battery electric buses, in comparison to the other things that have been considered, like hydrogen fuel cell buses, are more abundant and cheaper. And a major concern with battery electric buses is reliability, and so I'd like to take a quick moment to address that, as their range is not as high as the current diesel fleet. Thus, they should concurrently be implemented with on-route charging. So a few good examples I could think of for this is like near the downtown transit area, as well as near the UVA chapel. The infrastructure will only cost $100,000 more and will lead to a 1.1 to 1 replacement rate, which means that there wouldn't have to be a mass expansion of the bus fleet like some people have said. This will increase the mileage of each bus, allowing exhaustion of the fleet soon enough to receive federal grants for the most up-to-date technology, addressing the key concern that the Charlottesville Transit Director had. The transit director had actually suggested a few years ago having a part of the fleet that was diesel or natural gas based. But the fact is that diesel and natural gas emit a significant amount of greenhouse gases. And not to mention that natural gas itself will require additional infrastructure. So to truly eliminate greenhouse gases and the social cost of carbon, not just the actual cost associated with other transportation systems, we must transition to battery electric buses. So I'm glad that the city has chosen to expand its bus fleet nevertheless. As a first-year student at UVA, I feel that getting from UVA to the city of Charlottesville it's a huge hassle, and it's like going on a half-day trip. It shouldn't be like this. So we need fleet expansion, but we need to do this in a way that future UVA students, citizens of Charlottesville, and Virginians will thank us for. So I hope you guys consider transitioning significantly and adding many battery electric buses in your expansion.
Thank you, Mr. Eng. Somebody in that rough area back there? Coming over here? Ms. Cantini-Morava, how about you? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get you next. That's the danger of my pointing.
Suspect around me. First of all, yes to speed bumps and yes to electric buses, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. I'm Ellen Cantini-Morava from 225 Montebello Circle, and I'm going to talk about the JPA neighborhood and zoning. Since early in the zoning process, residents of the JPA neighborhood have raised a number of concerns about the proposed rezoning of our neighborhood. We brought them up at a meeting with Mayor Snook and Councilor Puryear in August, and we emailed them to the whole council the next day, but none of them have been addressed at any of your meetings. we ask that you do consider them before you vote on the new zoning code. First, please maintain residential zoning for the streets between Stadium Road and Jefferson Park Avenue. The draft code proposes RX3 zoning for them. That would allow buildings up to 175 feet wide, which would dwarf the existing 1- and 3-story houses in this area. It would also allow only 10% tree cover after 10 years of planting, whereas residential zoning would require at least 20% tree cover. The JPA neighborhood is already below the tree canopy standard for a healthy neighborhood. Also, commercial development is not suitable for these streets. Every resident lives within 1 block of JPA, which is proposed to be zoned CX5, so there's no need to add commercial uses to the narrow strip of streets. Second, please do not make the intersection of Shamrock Road and JPA CX8. Even though this was described as a key intersection in the Streets That Work report, it's hard to believe that the writers of that report actually looked at it. Shamrock is too narrow and winding to support 8-story buildings on each corner. We also asked to protect the historic Fry Springs Station on the corner of Maury Avenue and JPA, another so-called key intersection, also proposed to be CX8. At your November 1st work session, the topic of transitions between zoning categories came up, but not with respect to our neighborhood. The draft zoning map allows CX8 zoning across the street from RX3 at Montebello Circle, and CX5 adjacent to single-family homes on streets between Stadium Road and JPA. Please reconsider these transitions. But before any rezoning of our neighborhood, some urgent studies are needed. An infrastructure study, which was done for the RB and RC areas, but not for ours, a review of green infrastructure, which is already inadequate, and a traffic study for a neighborhood that already suffers from extreme traffic congestion. The study should include the extra traffic from the already approved student high-rises at 2005 and 1709, JPA, plus the future developments on Stribling and the UVA Piedmont housing complex. Please help preserve the residential character of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I'm sorry.
Thank you. My name is Jamal Bowie. I also live on Langford Avenue with my wonderful neighbors. I want to echo everything my neighbors have said about traffic calming on the street. It is hard to overstate how bad the traffic is and how bad the speeding is. We're not talking about 5 miles over or 10 miles over. We're talking about cars often going as fast as 50 miles per hour down this street on a regular basis. It is not just loud, it is actually quite frightening to be crossing the street and to hear a car revving up to come down or go up the street in an effort to, I don't know, enjoy the speed. And I get it, it's fun to go very fast, like stipulated, very fun to go fast. But as a resident, with 2 small children, 2 small, very active children, it is very worrisome to have to cross the street to go for a walk in the nearby circle, to walk up in either direction, and know that if I do not keep my absolute eye on one of my kids, a car may come speeding by and no one will have time to react to it. I think, like my neighbors, that 3 speed bumps positioned throughout the street would do a good job of slowing down some of the traffic. But I also think that it might be worth considering making the street one way in one direction or the other. And it's because of that hill, which allows for speed to build up if you're going down it, that perhaps a one-way street coming from South First Street going up to Ridge might be something that really does help reduce speeding and reduce traffic down the street. I would just like to add that there are quite a few of us watching this virtually, cheering on the neighbors virtually, and I think that this has been a concern for Langford for quite some time. I've been on the street since 2019, but I know people who've been on the street a little longer have also felt very strongly about the problem of speeding. So thank you again, and I really hope you consider these traffic calming measures for our street.
Mr. Bowie, could I ask you a second? I'm curious because I had not heard about this problem literally until I walked in and saw the list of people who wanted to speak. Is this something that's been discussed with the traffic engineers and folks like that, or?
I do not know.
Does anybody who's been involved with this issue know?
I have a vague recollection of hearing that some time ago a petition may have been brought or something to that effect to speak about this, but I do not know if there's been any formal conversation with the traffic engineer.
Well, I sent an email to, among others, the city manager today saying, I'm just hearing about this Langford Avenue problem. What's the story? And the city manager wrote back, I'm just hearing about it now too. So we got a little work to do.
Okay.
And thank you all for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, let's say.
We're on this side.
Yeah, let's go over this side. Yes, ma'am.
You have to rotate.
Good evening. My name is Kendall Columbaugh. I'm a fourth year at UVA, and I'm speaking on behalf of the many students behind me and the rest of us back at UVA who are concerned about our city's dependence on natural gas. I'm not talking about bus system. And now I'm not here to recite the environmental consequences of prolonged greenhouse gas uses, because I'm sure you've already heard all that before. Rather, I'm here to remind you of the almost 24,000 voices that deserve a say in this city's decision-making. Though most of us are only here for 4 years, and so our concerns often go overlooked, the policies you pass will have a lasting impact on students and the general well-being and beauty of Charlottesville. We also estimate that students pay in excess of $5 million in property taxes to the city each year from our off-grounds housing rent. For $5 million a year, we deserve a voice in local decisions specifically related to the greening of the housing stock. We came to the City Council today because we view the $200 rebate for natural gas water heaters and the no-cost installation of natural gas service connections as detrimental to the city's ability to transition to clean electric infrastructure. These incentives extend to developers who have been given the green light to build massive student plexes off grounds. The city has already approved a 5 to 7-story student high-rise on JPA, which aims to house 390 students. And there are pending proposals for additional high-rises on the intersection of JPA and Emmett, as well as on Ivy Road, with a combined total of 1,700 bedrooms. Given the existing rebates and incentives, it's probable that every newly constructed student housing building will opt for natural gas infrastructure, since the city is promoting it as the more cost-effective choice. We students are tired of living in the past. As Dominion ramps up its renewable energy fleet, we insist on having a voice in determining where we get our energy from. We understand the city gas service is a substantial revenue stream. However, it's equally vital to consider the economic advantages of electricity and the financial challenges associated with stranded assets. Transitioning to electric infrastructure will inevitably be required at some point in the future, so why not make that change today? I'm certain that you've received an abundance of feedback in the wake of the most recent revision of the zoning ordinance draft. I'm here today to ensure that electric infrastructure does not get swept under the rug in discussions regarding new housing in Charlottesville. We are not requesting the creation of a new rebate for electric infrastructure, although that would be preferable. Instead, we strongly encourage you to eliminate the incentive that perpetuate our reliance on natural gas. Thank you.
Thank you. So, on the end here. Oh, Peter?
I feel honored to be summoned forth.
Just trying to deal with the fact that my finger is imprecise.
Right. Yeah, so thank you. My name's Peter Krebs. I'm from the Piedmont Environmental Council, and I reside at 1022 Tufton Avenue. PC is very excited about the possibility of the properties that are collectively known as 0 East High Street being brought into the public domain. The details of that matter a lot, and we're going to hear more about those, but the principle is quite interesting. There are a lot of really exciting opportunities that could be explored with this property. Trails, passive recreation, quiet enjoyment, habitat for pollinators, intentional tree reforestation. But I think we also need to be expansive in our thinking. We know that there's a dire shortage of land for housing in Charlottesville, and PC is generally not in favor of taking offline land that's available for housing in designated areas like Charlottesville. So if housing can be included in a responsible way, we should definitely explore that. And also, let's be thinking broadly about connecting the area better to the surrounding communities. I have some friends that cannot go to that property right now because the access is just too difficult. As a quick aside, we were excited that the Loup de Ville Festival kind of landed on its feet at the Ravenna River Company. They're a terrific community partner. But we had to cancel the disabled walk that we had scheduled because that area is not handicap accessible in its current condition. So we can do a lot better in making that, that property more accessible. Also, let's be sure that we include opportunities for great concessioners like the Ravenna River Company who provide very significant public value as well. Really key to all of this, and it was alluded to a little bit in the Parks Master Plan presentation, is how we do our community engagement. We need to have a really robust process to determine how this property ought to be used, and that needs to be a conversation that includes every resident of the city, or at least represents the interests of all residents of the city. Should we pursue this acquisition, it'll be a great resource, and it'll need to be a great resource for every resident of Charlottesville. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Krebs. Okay, let's come right here.
Good evening. My name is Mahdi Amani. I'm currently living on Langford Avenue. I'm a father of 3 kids, each 8, 5, and 2 years old, and currently deciding on the 4th one. I'm originally from Afghanistan, and my family fled Afghanistan Civil War when I was only 5 years old. I remember my father worrying about our safety and leaving everything behind in Afghanistan and refuging to Pakistan to seek safety. Now I understand how important it is for parents to be worried about their kids' safety. Today I'm here to voice my concern about the safety of my kids and the kids living on Langford Avenue. In the past few years, I have witnessed a lot of cars and bikes driving at unacceptable speed speed limit through the Langford Avenue. The speed limit on Langford Avenue is 25 miles per hour. But I have witnessed cars and bikes flying through the street. Approximately 15 to 20 kids live on Langford Avenue, and we, the parents, are worried about safety of our kids. Today, I'm asking the City Council to consider a few speed bumps and proper warning signs on Langford Avenue before it's too late. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Amani. Let's see, how about over here in the back?
Good evening. My name is Ananya Madan, and I'm a junior at Western Albemarle High School. At Western, I'm a leader of the Green New Deal for Schools Club, and I've been a part of the Environmental Studies Academy for all of high school. My passion for caring for the environment was first sparked by my 4th grade environmental science teacher. In that class, I learned how to identify various plants, recognize bird songs, and test our creek health through macroinvertebrate sampling and other chemical tests. My grade was the first to begin an Earth Day event at our school, which educated both students and teachers on the importance of saving our beautiful planet through engaging activities including bird walks and creating art pieces from recycled bottles. Ever since that first exposure, I've grown to become very passionate about saving our Earth, especially advocating for practices that protect and benefit the environment. Combating climate change is an urgent matter, and every one of us must act now in order to save our planet one step at a time. By making the decision to switch to the use of zero-emission buses, the City Council of Charlottesville will be on track to creating a more just, sustainable, and flourishing community of Charlottesville. The transportation sector is a major contributor to carbon dioxide emissions in the city. Some solutions include carpooling, transitioning to alternative fuel sources such as electric, and using public transit. Public transportation includes bus usage. While there are many options, battery electric buses, BEBs, provide the most sustainable option. BEBs emit just 1/5 of greenhouse gases as compared to compressed natural gas buses. Additionally, BEBs are consistent with Charlottesville's carbon neutrality goals for 2050, as they preserve a remarkable 95% of the energy needed to propel them. BEBs promote cost-effective sustainability, costing just 43 cents per mile, and don't resist harmful gases, unlike natural gas buses. Therefore, the disproportionate impact of health issues such as water contamination and asthma on minority communities can be avoided, promoting social justice and health benefits for all. There is no Planet B. We must all do our part to save our planet, our home. I encourage you to consider the long-term effects of this decision, to think about your children and grandchildren, and understand that this decision affects more than just our local community of Charlottesville. By voting for zero-emission buses, you will set the example for surrounding communities to move toward a legacy of sustainability and equity. In the interest of my family, friends, and colleagues, I strongly advise the City Council to vote for zero-emission buses. Thank you for your time and attention.
Hey, could I ask you just a second? Tell me about your shirt. A number of y'all are wearing these shirts.
Yeah, we all decided to wear them in support.
And my vision is not very good.
It says zero-emission buses.
Okay, thank you. I figured it was something like that. Ms. Fraley?
Hi, I'm Kate Fraley. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and yes to zero emission, and yes to bumps on landwork. I'm here today to talk about the jail project. It's interesting tonight that you voted on the consent agenda about two programs that keep people out of jail, the drug treatment court and the behavioral health docket. The total annual contribution for those two programs has been $185,000. And I know the city has funded other programs meant to lower incarceration. But as it stands right now, if the preliminary plans for the jail renovation construction project go forward, the city will spend not only our usual annual share of the operating expenses, but an additional $1 million for 27 years. That's too much for incarceration and not enough to avoid incarceration. I want my tax dollars to go to programs that keep people from going to jail at all, and even further, from having any contact with the criminal legal system. Money will need to be spent going forward on the Marcus Alert program, which is mandatory. You all haven't even talked about that money yet. I think the vote on interim funding for the jail renovation construction project will be coming to you at your next meeting. When you put it on the agenda, please make sure that a public hearing is possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fraley. So that gets us through our 16 for right now. There will be another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting. We have a couple of things on the agenda which may take a little time, but it's not going to be hours and hours. I welcome you to stay and speak to us at the end of the meeting, or anybody can always send us an email at council@charlottesville.gov, and we will get it, and I will tell you that we will read it. So, thank you all for your comments. Now it's time to move on to action items, and the first action item is an ordinance to rezone property located at 630 Cabell Avenue. Dan O'Connell, Senior Planner, will present this to us.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. I'm Dan O'Connell, Senior Planner with Neighborhood Development Services. And tonight I am presenting, I believe this is the first of two readings, on an ordinance to rezone property located at 630 Cabell. This is in response to Mitchell Matthews Architects, who on behalf of Neighborhood Investments CA LLC have submitted an application pursuant to City Code to rezone property located at 630 Cabell Avenue, identified in the city's land records as tax map and parcel 05015500. This property was recently expanded via a boundary line adjustment to incorporate 1,200 additional square feet from a neighboring property that is zoned University Two-Family Residential, or R2U, and the applicant is proposing to rezone this additional area from R2U to multifamily residential, or R3, and that would make the entire property a uniform R3 zoning. No proffers are included in this request. The Planning Commission held a joint public hearing with Council on October 10th. The Planning Commission and Council had no concerns and were generally supportive of the request, and the Commission voted 6-0 to recommend approval of the rezoning. But that's all I have to present. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Council have any questions for Mr. O'Connell? I think that this is a one reading item, is it not, Mr. City Attorney?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So, any questions? If not, you want to make a motion?
I'm trying to find the item in the packet.
The resolution is at page 140.
Man, this is a long packet. Sorry. Almost there.
Take your time.
Clearly I am. Okay. Yes, I move to approve the ordinance for application ZM 23-00005, rezoning the property located at 630 Cabell Avenue, City Tax Map Parcel 050155000 from multifamily residential R3 and two-family residential University R-2U to multifamily residential R-3.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? I will just note that I was at the Planning Commission meeting when this was discussed, and it was clear that this is really, frankly, just kind of a technical thing in order to be able to allow them to add a couple of extra units of housing. It's not going to lead to a 10-story building or anything like that, but just it'll help a little bit. So I'm in favor of it. Anybody have any other discussion? If not, shall we vote?
Agreed.
Oh, did you want to say something?
No, just I said agreed.
Yeah, okay, let's vote. Passes 5-0. Okay, thank you. Next, a resolution for the City of Charlottesville to participate in a joint amicus brief relating to the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, AKA RGGI. Ms. Ritterfold?
Good evening, councilors. I'm here before you this evening with a request to authorize the city attorney to sign a joint amicus brief for a recent lawsuit related to Virginia's participation in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, also known as RGGI. The city attorney supports this request. As a reminder, Virginia joined RGGI through legislation passed by the General Assembly in 2020. RGGI is a cooperative, market-based initiative among 11 mid-Atlantic and northeastern states designed to reduce CO2 emissions from the power sector through the sale of pollution allowances. Proceeds from quarterly allowance auctions are returned to the member states. In Virginia, RGGI funds two very important programs: the Housing Innovation Energy Efficiency Fund and the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. Since the inception of RGGI, over $4 billion in revenue has been generated for participating states, with over $730 million in proceeds for Virginia. Revenues have supported important local work, with nearly $10 million in funding to Piedmont Housing Alliance and the Charlottesville Redevelopment and Housing Authority to renovate and build affordable, efficient homes. Additionally, just over $500,000 in grant funding has supported city efforts related to flood resilience planning, with a potential for future project implementation funding. The city's staff has long tracked Virginia's participation in RGGI. It is a crucial tool for decarbonizing the electricity sector. Progress towards the city's emission reduction goals are dependent on the grid becoming less carbon intensive over time. The Commonwealth's withdrawal from RGGI was taken through an administrative action by Virginia's Air Pollution Control Board. The Southern Environmental Law Center has filed a petition challenging the legality of the Air Pollution Control Board's action. In recognition of the negative effects on local communities should Virginia withdraw from RGGI, several Virginia localities are working together to file a joint amicus brief in support of SELC's lawsuit. Staff recommends City Council authorize the City Attorney to join the joint amicus brief concerning Virginia's participation in the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. This action is in direct alignment with the city's new strategic plan framework and with the city's 2023 Climate Action Plan. And I've recently had conversations with our city attorney and would defer to him if he has any comments to add.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes?
I would just say briefly that there is significant legal concern about an attempt administratively to undo a legislative initiative that is important both to this Commonwealth and to this council. And I would enthusiastically, if given that opportunity, join. And I would also echo Ms. Rittervold's statement that taking this position is very much in alignment with this council's climate initiatives. Thank you.
And I want to note, by the way, that the original draft of the resolution, which some people may have seen, has since been amended. I had asked the city attorney if it would be okay to take a stronger position, and therefore the version that is now in the packet says, therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Charlottesville that the city attorney is authorized to sign a joint amicus brief supporting the Southern Environmental Law Center's position opposing Virginia's withdrawal from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. So that is the resolution that is the final version that is in the packet. So is there any preference from council as to what we ought to do on this matter?
Yeah, I would move for approval.
Okay.
Need a more formal statement? Let's see here. I move for approval of the resolution supporting the City of Charlottesville's participation in the joint amicus brief opposing Virginia's withdrawal from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative.
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'll just note for the public, as is in our packet, Charlottesville will be directly affected by withdrawal in terms of hundreds of thousands of dollars that have already been used for planning for flood resilience in the face of climate change. So it's something with a direct local effect for sure.
Right. So, any further discussion? Shall we vote? The vote is 5-0. That passes. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rittervold. Now we come to resolution. I guess we will discuss them jointly, but we will have two separate votes on the matter. Yes. This is the two resolutions that pertain to entering into an agreement to sign a contract to acquire 23.81 acres of property at 0 Caroline Avenue, 510 Caroline Avenue, 532 Caroline Avenue, and 0 East High Street, and to enter into a mutual release. Mr. Sanders and/or Mr. Stroman, who wants to lead?
I'll start, and the goal will be to keep the attorney from having to say anything. So,
Mayor, who's an attorney.
He knows. It's okay.
I'm used to it. You know.
He knows. We talk like this all the time. This is a hotly contested matter that is before you. It has consumed a lot of interest, and over the past I don't know how many months, it's been talked about by a number of people. Just want to quickly review for council and for the public's benefit that this item regarding 0 East High has been something that has been talked about quite a bit within City Hall on multiple levels, figuratively and literally, in that we have been trying to really, really evaluate what the possibilities were as it related to this particular site. Understanding that it is a complicated site, the site being in the floodplain makes it really something of concern, as anyone might propose to put housing development inside the floodplain and the risk that is associated with such a decision. So back in April, council indicated an interest in having me and the team begin to evaluate what possibilities existed outside of the proposed development as it had been presented to our planning team. At that time, we engaged a firm to conduct an appraisal, started that process. That appraisal indicated the value for the site, and we've been working with that information ever since. While we've heard a lot from people who have demanded that we buy the property, and a lot of individuals who've been afraid or upset that they had not heard that the city was even considering it, that's called due diligence. So we were doing our work and trying to make sure that we could figure out exactly what was the means available for us to be able to do this, while the developer was still moving through their possibility of proposing the site as planned and having it considered as it was required to be done. As we've continued to work through this process, we've worked with the developer to identify what the possibilities were for what could be proposed in addition to what has been viewed by the public. And I want everyone to understand that the value of the property is not associated with the action that council took when they made it impossible for that particular project to move forward. That was a by right development that had conditions that needed to be addressed, but if those conditions were not addressed is why that particular project was unable to move forward, another project can be proposed. So the best way for the council to actually be able to step in and ensure that they have control over what happens would be a purchase. And that is why we've been working on this consideration for quite some time now. In getting that information pulled together for council, it's been a bit interesting to be able to go through what the various possibilities are and what we would like to propose doing. This is a passive recreation site today. It is identified in your package material that it will remain a passive recreation site, and that is because we have not had time to figure out what to do with the site. So it will remain that until such time as we do that work to figure out what else will be done. We do intend to engage in a robust public engagement process, one, because you all will not let us do anything but, so we will make sure that we meet that expectation. And we will bring that information back in the future. I'm not setting a date at this time as to when we will do this because it was not a part of our plan. It was not a part of my work plan. We were not sure that we would be at this point in this part of the year. But ideally, what we will continue to do is to evaluate what the various options are. We'll bring forward a moment for council to really consider what to do with the site. It'll be held in a work session in next year. And as we go from there, we'll begin to plan budgeting around that, as well as defining what a public engagement process will be. So I offer that as background as to where we are, how we got here, why we're here at this moment in time. $5.9 million is the price tag. It's for the entire site. It includes a single-family home. That home is occupied under a lease. That lease will continue, and Ravenna River Company will continue to exist on their lease as well. There are a number of avenues for us to take in regards to our economic development arm of the city organization that we would like to resolve the concern for the Ravenna River Company once and for all. So that's an opportunity for us, and we would like to prioritize that. And the goal would be to try to figure out some of those various actions that we might be able to undertake before figuring out the rest of the site and what else becomes of that. I guess what I'll say for council at this moment is the two items in front of you are in regards to us acquiring this. The funds for the purchase are coming from the CIP contingency fund. They are not being pulled from any other project where an allocation has been made. These are funds that are available for this purpose. Also in the packet is authorization for me to sign a mutual release of claim that remedies this good and end for all of us, so there will be no further action after the acquisition were to occur. And that is important because at this moment we are going back and forth with various conversations, public and not public, and this will actually resolve the matter when you take the second vote on any consideration that you make today about moving this item forward. So I'll stop there and allow our city attorney, hopefully he has nothing else to say because that means I left something out, but unless there's something else.
The city attorney takes the hint, nothing further.
So one thing I think we ought to add, because I'm not sure that you said so specifically, but the 5.9 figure was not just a figure pulled out of the air.
That is correct. $5.6 million was the appraised value, and the house was not a part of the appraisal. We did our own research to evaluate what we deemed that house to be worth and arrived at 5.9 as the number. So that
For the
was
two projects, for the two properties together.
all for the entire site, including the single-family home.
So the number is based on independent appraisals of value, not simply some demand from the other side.
Yes.
Thank you. Is there other discussion that we would like to have here?
I just want to say that I want to thank the city, city attorney's office and the city manager for the creativity in working on this. I think it's a good solution. I appreciate and respect the perspective that this is land that could be, have some form of housing on it. Maybe it will at some point, I don't know, but this to me is a spot of land that should have been bought by the city a long time ago, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's important. It speaks to the fact that we are a city on a river, and we have some connections to the river down by Riverside Park, but I think this would give us even more of a connection to the river. I think it's a public good, and I don't always suggest we spend $6 million on a piece of property, but I think this is one that's worth for the whole community, that we view this as an investment. I too had concerns about the floodplain piece, and I guess one thing I will say is that we get lots of feedback, lots of people saying, well, you should do this or you should do that, and we really do try to listen and think about what the community wants. And I feel like that this is pretty clearly what most people in the community want, and I'm excited about it.
And I'll just add to that. I guess the way I think of it is, I think it was Mayor Huja made the decision to build the trail system at Riverview Park, which turned out to be an enormous investment in terms of making that the most visited park in the city. And at that point, it also, began what ultimately became the Urban Rivanna River Corridor Plan, in terms of thinking about, is the Rivanna River an underutilized asset? Is there a way to get to what other cities have in terms of having a river arts district or river walk district that has public amenities, public facilities, and becomes a defining feature in public space within the community? In terms of land that's available to ever execute that vision, this is the largest parcel there is directly adjacent to the river. That also includes the Rivanna River Company, which is the main access point to recreation on the river, who also hold concert series, public events. So the only way cities can create defining public spaces is through land acquisition and this kind of action. I think it's reasonable for people to still disagree in terms of maybe, we shouldn't use money for this, but I think that is kind of the thinking and vision, and it exists within our comprehensive plan. It's not merely a spur of the moment reactive action with no thinking about what the future may entail. In terms of the criticism that the purchase price is inflated, quite honestly, I mean, in the context of the Planning Commission and City Council ruling that some of the public facilities were not in a substantial accord with the comprehensive plan, I don't think that's entirely unreasonable, but I think the city manager laid out the history is the history. We are where we are. We did get an assessment done, and that's kind of where we landed where we are. All of which is to say, I continue to think that this action will be in the best long-term interest of the city, and that will ultimately get to the point of creating a really defining public space for the community, where you don't need to have money in order to access a community event or a really defining feature of our natural world.
I wanted to add also, you mentioned then Mayor Huja. When Satyendra Huja was the director of planning in the 1980s, and I was on the planning commission, one of the planning exercises that we conducted at his urging was to consider back then what we would do if we were to open up the river for public access. How could we use the river as an asset and not merely something you have to get across to get to the county? Which is the way that, frankly, many people look at it. They look at Free Bridge as being a pain in the rear end, and the traffic's a problem. There are only a couple of ways you can get across the river, and that's the extent that many people in Charlottesville think about the river. I think we need to do something to really take advantage of it as an asset and whether that means as a recreational asset, whether it means it's simply a beautiful place, or whether it means, I mean, my Facebook feed is full of the people who live in the area taking pictures of the bird life in that area. It's cool. I'm a bird lover, bird watcher from a long ways back, and I kind of wish that I lived on the river, because it would give me an opportunity to see some birds that we don't see a whole lot of in Greenbrier. Anyway, I think it's something we've talked about. We have plans on it going back to 2000. If you look at the Tortigalis study that was done way back then, there are diagrams and a couple of pages of plans for it. We have talked about it and planned about it and hoped for the opportunity for at least 40 years. And until this moment, we will not have had the opportunity to realize any of those hopes. So I think it's an important part of our planning going forward.
So I just want to chime in. I went to actually visit Mr. Huja yesterday. I visit him often to check in and let him know things are going on. And I told him about this purchase, and he was very excited about it, and talked about some other things. But this is, I think this is one of the things that I think people expect a city, local government should do, and particularly if you had seen some of the proposed plans of the retaining walls and things like that would have been. It just would not have been very welcoming. I'm thinking about, I can't think about, maybe Natalie, you might know the city in South Carolina that has the river running through it.
Greenville?
Greenville, thank you. And I think that we can take advantage of that, down the road as like being the economic, boost for the city and the community once we kind of get a plan together. I think we're going to look back on it many years from now and said it was a good purchase. I'm glad that we're doing this, and we have received a few emails in the past few days indicating that there was a concern over that we need the housings. We do need housing, but not there, and not at the detriment of the environment. So I'm looking forward to supporting this.
So, anybody like to make a motion?
So the one item is one of two readings.
Right. First, we have to pass the resolution number 15.
You have to pass 15 before you can
and then
do
we
16.
can agree to pass number 16 on to the next
So what
meeting.
page is the first one in the packet?
I've got it up to read right now.
Okay.
I would move a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an assignment of contract to acquire 23.81 acres of property located at 0 Caroline Avenue, 510 Caroline Avenue, 532 Caroline Avenue, and 0 East High Street, and to enter into a mutual release of claims with 7 Development LLC and Riverside Multifamily LLC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion? If not, let's vote. Passes 5-0. Then the second item is a resolution to approve the appropriation for the assignment of the contract. And I gather that is something we need to this is one of two readings, so we would pass it on to the next meeting and have the meeting.
Can we put it on the consent agenda?
Agreed.
Or does it have to be read again?
It doesn't have to be, but I sort of feel like something of this significance ought not to be on the consent
Okay,
agenda.
fair enough.
It won't take us long, but I want to have an actual
Okay, I
vote
like
on it.
that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that concludes our general business for the meeting. Councilors, any other business items for consideration?
I would just say in response, in part to the concerns about Langford Avenue, it just came to mind in terms of following up on that to also include just CRHA looped in. I think that may help expedite getting to a solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that as well, as hearing those concerns during numerous of these traffic calming programs for the county for many years, that it just, hadn't been on our radar, but now it is. I'm sure, hopefully now we can get staff to conduct a study, because it is a lot that has to factor in to do it. But I think that I've been over there many times, to visit people, and it is a speeding problem, so hopefully we can address the residents' concerns. So.
And then one other thing that I wanted to mention, because you all may remember a month or two ago, 2 or 3 meetings ago, a woman came and spoke to us asking us to help her in some way deal with a problem that she was having with Dominion Power.
Oh, yeah.
And I told her, well, you know, we don't really have much to do with Dominion Power here, but give me your information, because we have a contact over there. Somebody keeps sending us information. And so she gave me her information, and I made contact with Dominion, and I want to thank Felix Sarfo-Kentanka, who is the PR person for Dominion, because he was able to get the right person in touch with the person who needed the help, and she got her refund a couple days ago.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Every now and then, things work out.
Government is here to help.
Exactly. Any other matters before we come to the final community matters section? Okay, so we're down to the next final community matters section. Who would like to speak to us at this point? So we got a bunch of people here. Let's, yes, ma'am. Tell us who you are and where you live, and got
Yes,
3
sir.
minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council and remaining attendees. My name is Mary Margaret Lee. I'm a 4th year at the University of Virginia, where I study anthropology. I like to define anthropology as the history of people interacting with the environment and the environment shaping people. And we have an opportunity here with our bus decision to create that kind of history. Many of my classmates have already shared the statistics, so I guess I'll pull on the heartstrings. I really don't see any way forward to a sustainable and livable future except through the implementation of battery electric buses in our fleet expansion, with on-route charging, of course. But even with that expansion, our action won't matter unless people ride the CAT. So I can't suggest that expansion without including the need for a massive, all-encompassing public service campaign that educates people about the benefit of riding buses and riding green buses, and that also invests in the educators and organizers that empower people to make sustainable choices and to engage with their government. I attend UVA, but I'm from a city called Greensboro, North Carolina. If you recognize that name, you understand that I am very familiar and proud of our history of students engaging with political action and making real change. I was very blessed to receive an all-encompassing, I already used that word, but a very rich political and academic education in Greensboro, and I'm proud to represent it here. And so I ask that you listen to the voices of young people. I am not attempting to speak with hostility, but simply to represent the urgency that my generation feels about this decision. I ask you to make a decision that you can look me in the eyes, look your children in the eyes, look these ingenious and brave students from Western in the eyes and be proud of. I know that you're on this committee, this council, because you care about your community, and part of that community is your children, their children, and all future children. And we simply cannot have a future where we can tell them that we made the right choice, even though it was difficult, and that we are proud of ourselves to do that if we do not decarbonize and decarbonize through battery electric buses. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Anybody over here? Yes. Yeah. We'll get to everybody, don't worry.
I promise I will keep this short, but I thought first off I would start off with a little joke to break the ice.
Tell us who you are.
Huh, sorry?
Tell us who you are.
I'm Haley. I live on 1800 Jefferson Park Avenue. Where did the Pilgrims take the Mayflower when it got sick? To the nearest dock. So I thought I would just break the ice with a terrible little pun there. I'm Haley Mulligan. I live at 1800 Jefferson Park Avenue, and thank you to the mayor and to the council for allowing me to speak here today. I wanted to call your attention to a matter that I see as public safety that has to do with the lighting, or I suppose lack thereof, on Montebello Circle. Unlike other roads like Shamrock or Harmon, Montebello Circle is not a primarily straight road that goes between Stadium and Jefferson Park Avenue. It's very curved like this, so there's a lot of little nooks and crannies. When I walk down it, especially at night, a lot of times I don't walk, I drive, and I park wherever I can on grounds that's allowed. The reason for that is that there are pretty much no street lights on Montebello that makes it unsafe for people to walk after sunset. There is one on the southernmost bend that's attached to a telephone pole. Sometimes it's out, sometimes it's flickering, and in addition to not producing a lot of light that's useful, it also doesn't produce light in very specific areas on the street. It doesn't take care of all of the areas. So I would ask the council perhaps to, on the southwest bend of the southernmost stretch of Montebello Circle, think about erecting a street light. It does not have to be strong, it does not have to irritate homeowners, it doesn't have to be LEDs, and there already exist multiple landmarks on that street, such as trees or fences, that it could go behind without, again, irritating homeowners. And to me, I see only positives. It will increase visibility for bikers, people who may be scooter to class, pedestrians, and of course cars, and it will increase the safety of students and make it so that students like me don't feel unsafe or have to drive or use alternate routes that maybe take longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. I'm not sure where I was pointing last. How about in the back?
Hello, Council. My name is Eli Cook, and I'm a systems engineer at UVA. For those of you who don't know what that is, welcome to the club. I have no idea either. But I'm also a Charlottesville native. I grew up near Washington Park. I attended Charlottesville City Schools from kindergarten through 12th grade. So I care about our community making the right choices. And in this case, that's regards to our buses. So I know a lot of people have spoken to buses already tonight. But I just wanted to say a couple things that I came across while researching these buses. When looking into the buses, the couple things that stood out to me were the negative effects of the diesel buses on our community. From a recent report, the Energy Foundation and Virginia Clinicians for Climate found that air pollution costs Virginia around $23 billion annually due to hospitalizations, and it disproportionately affects lower income and minority groups the most. So these diesel buses have served our community well, but we have an opportunity to move past their dirty emissions with the future, which is electric buses. And these electric buses have a bunch of benefits when it comes to emissions. There's zero tailpipe emissions of greenhouse gas kind or other air pollution kind. And they also don't have to be more expensive. In a recent report that the Community Climate Collaboration released, they found that diesel buses, if you purchase 4 of them, or 4 electric buses, over the course of their lifetime, they can be up to $500,000 cheaper, even with a higher upfront cost due to their lower fuel and maintenance costs. So they also have other cost benefits, such as reducing those $23 billion that we're spending on hospital bills due to emissions, and also around $51 per ton of carbon that they don't emit. And that number comes from leading climate scientists. Also, electric buses will get more efficient as time goes on. The technology will improve, the cost will go down. They are the future. And Charlottesville is a very important place. It's the most important place in the world to me. It will always be a place I call home. And I want it to be the best home it can be for everyone who's here now and everyone who is still to come. And I think that electric buses are just one step in that direction to making it a cleaner, greener home for us all. Thank you, Councilman, for your time, or Council people for your time, and I hope you consider my proposition.
Thank you, Chris. Next, yes, right there.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Amanda Bilchick. I live in Charlottesville, and I'm part of Albemarle County. I'm a junior at Western, Albemarle High School. I'm a leader of 2 different environmental clubs, one of which being Green New Deal for Schools. And if you can't tell by all of my friends here, we really want a Green New Deal within our schools. I'm also an intern here in Charlottesville with C3. From a young age, I've been passionate about protecting our environment, and I've always loved to be outside. I've been an avid soccer and tennis player for years and really appreciate playing these sports in the outdoor setting. My family and I also love to go for walks in our neighborhood. I'm also very mindful about the next generation. I hope to have kids of my own someday, and I want them to be able to enjoy the outdoors in the same way that I have. I would like the City Council of Charlottesville to switch to transit buses that use alternative fuels to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It is no secret that fossil fuels are the largest contributor to climate change, accounting for approximately 75% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Vehicles such as cars, buses, and trucks are constantly emitting carbon dioxide, while options like battery electric buses have zero tailpipe emissions and as such are congruent with the city's carbon neutrality goal for 2050. Battery electric buses are extremely efficient and could reduce air pollution and also provide health benefits. In addition, we could be a model for the state and even the country to switch over to a much more sustainable transportation system. As a C3 intern, I held a table at the Party for the Planet event a few weeks ago in which I had several conversations with local citizens about climate justice in the area. One woman and I had a lengthy conversation about the disproportionate effects of climate with respect to race and socioeconomic status. Our group at C3 also highlighted these points in 2 mini documentaries we made earlier this year. Vehicles and gas cost money, and many people cannot afford to have their own cars. In Charlottesville, disadvantaged communities are more likely to ride the bus because these cost limitations or because they are more likely to live in parts of town that are less connected. As a result, these low-income families and minority groups are exposing themselves to many emissions that they do not have the option to avoid. These communities are the most vulnerable and affected by climate change. They are put unfairly at a much higher risk for several health conditions due to air pollution. By expanding access to electric vehicles in the community, we are making steps towards climate justice. We are promoting equity related to air quality and aiding the mobility of disadvantaged communities. On behalf of my peers, my teachers, my friends, my coworkers, and my family, I urge the City Council to vote for zero-emission buses. We have a responsibility to each other and to the next generations, as there is no planet B. Those who take our place on this one and only planet we have are going to face the worst of climate change, so we must do everything we can to stop that from becoming a reality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Wilczek. Next, yes, yes. We'll just go down the aisle there.
In case you haven't already heard enough about the zero-emission buses, I would like to add my statement to the mix. My name is Josie Fishman. I live in Charlottesville, and I'm a 12th grade at Charlottesville High School. I'm the president of CHS's Environmental Club, and I'm very passionate about the environment because of my love for the outdoors and nature. This summer, I had the opportunity to work with C3 to make a guide for teens and a couple of short documentaries. Had the opportunity to talk to local climate leaders, learn filmmaking skills, and dive deep into local issues. Many of the things I learned this summer gave me a better perspective on why Charlottesville should invest in zero-emission buses. One of the first things I learned this summer was the effect of climate injustice in Charlottesville. Predominantly non-white neighborhoods in Charlottesville have more air quality issues, lower tree coverage, and less access to, this is a little small, to green transportation and many of the other neighborhoods in our city. Fortunately, zero-emission buses would be a huge contributor to ensure a more equitable climate. They would not emit harsh chemicals from their tailpipes, which causes air pollution and is harmful to our lungs. Additionally, while they serve all parts of Charlottesville, they predominantly serve many of the communities affected most by climate injustice, allowing for a more equitable opportunity for green transportation and benefiting the health and well-being of our neighborhoods. Another really important thing I learned this summer was that the city's current climate goals is to have a 45% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2030 and to be carbon neutral by 2050, which I'm sure you all know. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, gas-fueled buses emit approximately 350 grams of carbon dioxide per passenger ridden for 1 mile, the highest out of any form of transportation on the list. Aside from cars, in contrast, electric buses use approximately 50 grams, which are from operations, being by far the lowest on the list. We can see the negative impacts of a gas-powered bus and understand it will inhibit Charlottesville's movement towards its goal. Zero-emission buses are the key to helping the town reach its goal and creating a carbon-free area for everyone. The third thing I learned this summer was the importance of local politics. As someone who is interested in the workings of government and wants to go into government, I assumed that a city government would have the smallest impact because it has the most limited reach. But through my time at C3, I learned that local government is extremely important because it can make policies that can reach everyone in the town and truly make an impact. The policy decisions of localities have a great effect on the decisions of other localities, and Charlottesville can set a standard for a cleaner, brighter future for other cities to follow. If we invest in zero-emission buses, we have the potential to be leaders in the field of green energy. Before I close, I want to emphasize one last thing. I represent the youth of Charlottesville when I say this. The world will probably look a lot different by the time I'm older. I hope it will look better, be cleaner with more advanced solutions. But for the present, I can only do my part and hope. You all have the power to make a difference, one that will make a large impact on our community, and our future is in your hands. I strongly urge all of you to vote in favor of zero-emission buses for the sake of all of our futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fishman. Are you going to go? Okay.
I'm sorry to say I'm also speaking about the buses. It's going to be a little redundant. But my name is Virginia Fleming. I'm a second-year aerospace engineering student at UVA. Our world is in grave danger, on track to be inhabitable for future generations. The responsibility to stop this falls on each of us, though more heavily on government systems that have the power to make greater changes than individuals. For this purchase, Charlottesville Area Transit should invest in all-electric vehicles to make the necessary strides toward a better future. It is well known that diesel buses produce large amounts of greenhouse gases that detriment the health of many citizens, especially those with concerns such as asthma and lung cancer. So why do we continue to use harmful technology? Yes, public transportation decreases pollution as fewer vehicles are on the road. However, if the buses were electric, every single rider would cause zero emissions, making the system even more beneficial. Charlottesville's new bus system should use depot charging for the far more reliable infrastructure. According to Nicole Lepper, en route charging stations are more difficult to implement and have many more issues in use due to vandalization, inclement weather, and pushback from locals. Instead of investing the money that would be needed to install en route charging systems, the city should buy extra buses that can be used to switch out buses on longer routes that would otherwise run out of charge. Furthermore, Idaho National Laboratory states that the average price of energy used per mile for an electric bus is half that of diesel. Therefore, with the funds from the bipartisan infrastructure law to purchase low-emissions public transportation, covering the bulk of cost of electric buses and the lower cost per mile, the city would save money in the coming decades by switching to electric. Finally, leaving some of the fleet to be either diesel or natural gas-powered buses would only prolong the issue at hand and tell residents that they don't really need to make changes in their life. Switching to electric transit will set an example for citizens to follow, causing a social domino effect and perpetuating better habits throughout Charlottesville. It is crucial that we take this leap into the future, leading the way for not only locals but surrounding cities to make the switch to electric transportation while also keeping its citizens' quality of life as a priority. If we are going to make a change, it needs to start here. This choice determines our future. I implore you to choose electric. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming. Anybody over here? Yes, ma'am.
I came with props. If you want to take one, pass it down, that'd be great. Thanks.
All right, hello. I'm Natalie Oshrin. I live at 531 Caroline Avenue. I would like to talk about improving streets and street design in Charlottesville. I saw that a traffic light is being installed at the corner of Rugby Avenue and Rose Hill Drive, which would be a great intersection for a roundabout instead. There are numerous roundabouts that already exist in our area, and they have all gained user acceptance. It is a proven approach that has many advantages over signalized intersections, all supported by extensive research. According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, roundabouts are 1. Safer for cars. The tight circle of a roundabout forces drivers to slow down, reducing chances for the most severe type of intersection crashes, right angle, left turn, and head-on collisions. Every driver has to slow down for a roundabout. There is no racing to make the light. It's safer for pedestrians. Pedestrians walk on sidewalks around the perimeter and cross only one direction of traffic at a time. Crossing distances are shorter and traffic speeds are lower. Extremely dangerous slip lanes that allow cars to make right turns without slowing down are eliminated. Sidewalk corners are not blocked by signal poles. 3, it's cheaper. While the initial construction cost of a roundabout varies by site, its maintenance is usually cheaper than for intersections with signals, with a longer service life of approximately 25 years compared to 10 years for a typical traffic signal. 4, they're less polluting. Less idling reduces vehicle emissions and fuel consumption. This is consistent with our climate action plan. 5, more time efficient. Traffic flow improves after traditional intersections are converted to roundabouts, and roundabouts allow for the removal of left turn lanes, freeing up space for better bike and pedestrian mobility, which can reduce car traffic further. 6, more aesthetically pleasing. At a roundabout, you can place art or plants in the middle. A center tree can increase the city's canopy. Since 1996, Jim Brainerd has been the mayor of the city of Carmel, Indiana, population of about 100,000. In an interview with Streetsblog USA, he discussed the main part of his platform, retrofitting the city's road network by replacing hundreds of traffic lights with about 140 circular traffic treatments. This has helped reduce the rates of car crash deaths and serious injuries to some of the lowest levels in the nation. Roundabouts produce safer car speeds, save countless lives, improve traffic flow, reduce pollution and expenses, and are more aesthetically pleasing. Incredibly, there are no negatives. It's like the Bodos of traffic control. Brainerd famously said, "We couldn't take a roundabout out now if we wanted to." We can't wait any longer to lead the culture shift. Every street needs to accommodate all users. The state of Virginia has adopted roundabout-first policies requiring that roundabouts be considered as a preferred alternative when building new intersections. I look forward to working with the city to find other opportunities to create roundabouts instead of signalized intersections in future projects. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Yes, sir.
Technology.
I am so sorry that you think you have gone a whole meeting without talking about zoning. So here goes. Jay Oshrin, 1217 Meriwether Street. This is written by a gentleman named John Gorey. There's no silver bullet solution to huge societal challenges like housing affordability, segregation, and climate change. But among smart growth urbanists, encouraging residential density comes pretty darn close to a panacea. That's because clustering homes closer together can help create a virtuous cycle. For starters, just building more homes can relieve price pressure during a housing shortage. And multifamily construction allows for more and generally smaller and more affordable units to be built per lot. That increased housing density also makes public transit more efficient because more riders live close enough to use the service more often. And residents of multifamily housing are less likely to have a car, meaning that they are more likely to rely on transit. That in turn reduces car dependence, making a walkable, car-free lifestyle more viable, which increases sales at local retailers and restaurants, reduces reliance on fossil fuels, and opens up housing options to lower-income households who don't own a vehicle. And that frees up even more land to house people, shops, or trees instead of parked cars. Which is why I'm concerned and confused a bit by the Planning Commission's recommendation on the new RNA zone. If one of the intentions of the new zoning is to eliminate single-family zoning, which is more expensive and more exclusionary, then the RNA zone, as it stands, seems to preserve it. I reached out to NDS to get a better understanding of the rules, and they explained that if an owner wanted to build on a lot within this district, there are a few options. First, if they knock down the original structure, no matter the units, they are only allowed to build a single-family unit in its place. However, if they keep the original structure, they can build 2 additional units. There are density bonuses at various levels as well. However, these rules and the fact that single-family zoning would be eliminated in the rest of the city seems like a recipe to turn these neighborhoods into McMansion magnets. Furthermore, while it is clear that everyone in this process has the best of intentions, separating out these districts from the RA zone is effectively a different type of exclusionary zoning. Trying to guess outcomes is a highly speculative venture. One of the main concerns folks have is displacement caused by increased property taxes. This is an area where the city actually does have direct control and guarantee outcomes. Instead of tasking the city assessor with judging lots based on potential, the assessor can be tasked with raising assessments only if there is an actual improvement built on the property. The market may speculate, but the assessors do not have to. I understand that there is a need to make up for the decades of racial segregation perpetuated by the use of exclusionary zoning, redlining, highway construction, and urban renewal. It is a worthy goal, and I think everyone knows that you have the best intentions. That the anti-displacement piece was left to literally the last month of a 7-year discussion reflects that it was the most difficult part of the process. Sometimes just acknowledging the problem is enough. I think this is one of those times. The new code is a great thing you are doing. With the adoption of it, we will be going in the right direction. This is truly a game changer. You have already done it. I encourage you to restore the RNA district back to RA, or simply adjust the tax assessment strategy for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oshman. Do you want to speak to us? Good.
Andrew Hickson, 229 Langford Avenue, homeowner and resident. Sorry, I don't have a voice. Hopefully you can hear me. I hope to be able to fill in some of the gaps that some of my wonderful neighbors left in their statements tonight regarding speeding and generally safety issues on Langford Avenue. I am the newest, with my wife and 1-year-old son, residents of the group of neighbors that showed up tonight. And I can answer your question, Mr. Mayor, about why this has kind of popped up out of nowhere. There's kind of a general sense that because we would not ever be able to get all of the residents of the street to buy into certain measures to improve safety on the street, that it's not worth pursuing kind of formally. However, after speaking with a local officer who happened to be stopped in front of my house the other day, I discovered that showing up face-to-face is the best way to communicate our concerns and hopefully get expedited action. We hope that there is no need for extended studies on how dangerous it is to rip motorcycles, mopeds, trucks, $50,000 cars and $500 cars up and down our street. And we also know that there are wonderful examples of speed humps around the city that are very effective in forcing, in a passive and relatively cost-effective manner, the moderation of speed. As parents on Langford, we have to worry about picking up empty shell casings, calling in gunfire that is regular for our Ridge Street neighborhood. We have a lot of issues that transcend how much emissions come from the buses that run down Ridge Street. And I can tell you that is not the biggest impact for our community, which is a very diverse mix of socioeconomic and other people. I do also think, and I would be happy to go to each and every person on our street who lives there and offer them to sign a petition if that would help expedite or otherwise unlock any paths for getting safety measures put in place like speed humps, even if I'm rejected, because I want to show the children of some of these young adults, their siblings, that there are people looking out for their own safety, because many of the homes where residents ride vehicles illegally with no helmets on bikes, for example, or speeding, have very young kids of their own, and their parents or siblings are unlikely to ever show up to a meeting like this to advocate for their own children's or siblings' safety. So I think it behooves us who do see this and who do see an opportunity to make the streets safer for everybody to take advantage of this low-hanging fruit. And that's why we're here to talk about speed humps and not any of the other issues on Langford and Ridge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hickson. Anybody else over here? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is James Groves. I'm a city resident and co-chair of the Seaville 100 Climate Alliance. Tonight, you've listened to many comments regarding your upcoming decision about CAT buses. Several voices were those of students in my Sustainable Energy Systems course at UVA. Recently, we've discussed the decision before you, and students formulated their own positions on the topic. Informed by their thoughtfulness, I've developed my own perspective. First, I encourage you to keep both of the city's climate targets in mind, a 45% greenhouse gas reduction by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2050. What message would the city send to our community if you ignore the 2030 target and expand the bus fleet with diesel or compressed natural gas? Can we all just kick the can down the road and not worry about climate change now? Should we all rationalize and say to ourselves, we'll be able to purchase better technology in 2035 and receive more for our money at that time? Let's wait. Second, you've heard concerns expressed about electric bus range and reliability. In terms of range, just install on-route charging. In terms of reliability, C3's recent study report suggests that many communities have not experienced exceptional reliability challenges with electric buses. Third, consider the health risks of running 3 or 4 times as many noisy, pollution-emitting diesel or compressed natural gas buses by homes in our community. Repeated exposure to diesel exhaust increases the risk of respiratory disease, asthma, and as we heard tonight, potentially lung cancer. Separately, your consultants predict a 1,000% increase in carbon monoxide emissions from compressed natural gas buses. Fourth, electric buses are expensive, yet presently the federal government is offering to cover much of that cost. Strive to capture enough external support to allow all future bus purchases to be electric. If such dollars prove to be limited, insist that no less than 45% of our bus purchases made this decade shall be electric, tapping into at least the spirit of the city's 2030 climate goal. In closing, let me paraphrase President Kennedy's comments so many years ago. You should choose to go electric in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that you should be willing to accept and one that you should be unwilling to postpone. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Mr. Groves. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? Okay, so that will close our Community Matters session, and there is really nothing else for us to do. Mr. City Manager, you got something else you need from us?
No, I do not.
Okay, so we will come back on Wednesday to talk more about zoning matters.
That's right.
And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.